think we're live.
We're live.
Hi there. Welcome to Disney Deep Dive, where each week we dive into the history, story, and details of the Disney parks. I'm Leah.
And I am your futuristic man of yesteryear, Stefan. Make sure your lap belts are secured and snug and
yeah.
safely tightened, because today we're taking a deep dive into Space Mountain.
Yes. And quick, after that wonderful intro, just a little bit of housekeeping. We were not here last week, which we had announced the week before, and it was also on our, we weren't on the live place. We did remove ourselves, or had Dean remove us from the live stream, because we were actually on vacation. So we weren't at Walt Disney World, but we had a great time, and now we're back. We actually were staying at a family cottage where there is no Wi-Fi.
No service at all. Phones barely work even.
Yes, which is interesting, especially Stefan is a full-time screen printer, and of course we have our Disney small shop, and I'm a social media manager. So for social media, you need to have Wi-Fi. Yeah. So it was interesting, but we had a great time, and we're happy to be back here. So yeah, Space Mountain. Here we go.
Here we are. Okay, so Space Mountain is a space-themed indoor roller coaster that originally opened in 1975 at Walt Disney World. It is featured at every Disney park except for Shanghai Disneyland. It's the only one that doesn't have one. And each of the rides, they do have their own unique story, history, background, a lot of stuff involved in all of them. So we're going to primarily focus on Disney World and Disneyland.
Yes, which if you are new, hi, and we have only been to Walt Disney World. So we do plan, not even just plan, we will be going to some of the other parks, especially Disneyland, Disney Cruises, and then as our kids get older, maybe internationally. But
for now,
just for now, we've only been to Walt Disney World, just for your reference.
So what is your personal experience with this ride?
So this is kind of interesting, but I have never been on it.
Which what?
Yeah, I know. I don't think he even realized this, because
I didn't think there existed a person who hadn't been on it.
Right, who'd been to Walt Disney World.
Disney World.
Multiple times. And so first of all, I haven't been to Disney a ton, compared to a lot of our friends. But the first time that I went, I was younger, and I was a child, young child, and I wasn't really into roller coasters yet. I didn't really get into roller coasters until late middle school, high school. So I wasn't into roller coasters yet. And so I didn't go on my first trip. My second trip, I was in high school. And at that point, I loved roller coasters, but my mom was there on a business trip. And so it was just my dad and my brother. So we only spent a couple of days in the parks, and I didn't ride it. So it wasn't on the list. I don't know. And then we didn't go with our kids because I was all focused on them. They were all very young for our trips. We were all
they
focused.
weren't old enough to ride it yet.
Yeah. And I wanted to at Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, because I was like, perfect. The line will be short, but it just didn't happen. And then we were in Orlando for work, but then we didn't go to the parks. We just went to Disney Springs, and that's really it. So I haven't been that much, but next time it's happening, and now I know lots about it. So yeah. True. Fun fact, Leah has never been on Space Mountain.
Well, I have.
Yeah.
Many
Let's hear your
times.
Story. Yeah.
Obviously we didn't go the most recent time we went, so it was
really two.
Yeah, both recent times. But when I was a kid, it was my favorite roller coaster. And I was not into roller coasters when I was a kid. They terrified me. I never enjoyed them. But Space Mountain was different. I think it's probably because, and I'm going to get into this more later, but it doesn't go super fast. There's not huge drops that are terrifying, but it's dark and just scary enough that it feels like you're going really fast. And as a kid, I really enjoyed it. So I went, my first trip to Disney, we went on it once, really liked it. Second trip to Disney, my parents...
Well, your first trip, he would have only been 6 years old, so you were pretty young.
Yeah. Second time, though, my parents got I can't remember what they called it. It was like a late night pass. We got to go after the park closed, basically, which meant that we could go on all the rides.
Which they do, those kind of passes now, they kind of have a resurgence, but this would have been in the 90s.
Yeah. So I went on it, I think 4 times. We just kept going on because there was no line. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And we just kept going on.
A little toe-headed blonde with a great 90s haircut.
I'm pretty sure I had a mullet. Maybe not. I might not have. Maybe I didn't. Not at this time. Maybe just long hair. Anyway, so it went on it a lot, over and over and over again. One of the times, the lights were on for some reason. So I got to ride it with the lights on, which you'd think would diminish the fun and effectiveness of it, because then you see how the sausage is made.
The giveaways,
Yeah, and it didn't, though. I still really enjoyed it. But it was always my favorite ride. I always loved it. I obviously have other favorite rides now, but as a kid, really enjoyed that one. So it has a special place in my heart.
And before we hop in, I do want to say that if you are watching the replay, leave comments, let us know your story for Space Mountain. We would love to hear it. I think that it's such a popular, if not the most popular roller coaster at Disney. And also, if you are watching live, you may chat with us. We will respond to the live comments as we see them coming in.
Tippity type on your typing board. We can see
let us know. Chat with us. It's way more fun.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let's get into it. So the initial concept and construction. So it opened in Disney World originally, like I said in the beginning, but the story starts in Disneyland.
Yeah,
so
this part's interesting.
After the Matterhorn, the bobsled ride, which opened in 1959, after that opened, it was a huge success. People loved it, and it was the first roller coaster type ride that Disneyland had. Now, something to keep in mind before this, Disneyland as we know it, the Disney parks as we know them, they weren't solidified as a concept. They really weren't sure what direction they were going to go, how it was going to look. They were still actively building and creating things and deciding what belonged there and what didn't. And Walt he didn't think, but he wasn't sure if the thrill rides were something that he wanted at his family-friendly parks. Is that a family-friendly thing? And you got to remember, this is the late 50s, sentiments were different.
And these places weren't established. What we know today, we have a reference point. We have the, what's that? The hindsight 2020. We have that,
Yeah, and we take it for granted because we're like, oh, well, it's a theme park, so it has this, this, and this. At the time, they were still coming up with the idea, and things were different. People viewed things differently, so it was like, well, is this thrilling ride really part of a family-friendly place? Is it too scary? It was a different time. So after it was a success, though, Walt's mind was changed, and he said, okay, thrill rides have a place in the Disney parks.
Yes, I like this Walt quote. Why can't we have a Space Mountain ride? I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and it wasn't like that was going to be the name. It was just a quote that came out, which was just like, why not a Space Mountain ride? We have a bobsled mountain ride.
Right.
And I'm not even sure if that's legit. I found it somewhere, and I found it in places.
I hope that it is. I like it. I think it's fun. Why not?
It could be paraphrased. Who knows? But Walt Disney's fascination with space and space travel and the possibilities.
Dean popping on live.
Hey,
says,
Dean.
Hi. Space Mountain was my favorite ride when I first went to Walt Disney World. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So Disney's fascination with space travel and really the possibilities of the future was a career-long interest. I mean, you can see it in all his work. Him viewing what is possible and space in the future is a part of everything that he touched. So at this time, around the time when the Matterhorn became popular, it was when Tomorrowland was getting a facelift. It wasn't that old, but it was already starting to look outdated.
Right. Well, and Tomorrowland can easily look outdated. I mean, that's
right.
It's
hard, because it initially was supposed to immerse you in this world of the possibilities of the future. But when the future is always happening, how do you keep that up? Which is one of the reasons why they went with the retro future thing eventually, because then you don't have to keep updating that.
Yep.
But that's a story for another time. But this was a time when they were updating it because there was a lot of criticisms about it. A lot of sponsorships were everywhere, things like that. So it was getting a refurb, it was getting a facelift. And this is when Walt went to John Hinch, Imagineer legend, and tasked him with the idea of coming up with this space roller coaster ride. So John Hinch he's the one who originally designed Tomorrowland. So when he was tasked this around 1964, 1965 time. And at the time they were calling it the Space Voyage or the Space Port.
Yes, which is a whole decade before Space Mountain actually open to the public. So this is, I mean, a decade in the making, or at least.
And then this is at Disneyland, obviously, because Disney World wasn't open yet.
Yes.
So the original concept that he came up with, that he designed, you can see it looks it's pretty close to what they eventually had. The look of it, anyway. The outside was more. It did have that mountainous look, but it had like these curving, sloping sides, and it looked more like a futuristic circus tent. It had the spires coming out of the top, but it almost looked like poles holding a tent up. And so then it went through a lot of redesigns, and one of the things that stands out with the original design is that they originally were planning on having 4 separate tracks, like how the Matterhorn has 2 tracks. It was going to have 4, and they were going to be zipping out and then back into the ride. So the tracks were like circling the mountain.
Yeah, which sounds cool.
Yeah,
but...
which again the Matterhorn does. So this is all based on the popularity of the Matterhorn. So
banking on that.
A lot of the ideas initially were like the Matterhorn, but in space. So what ended up happening was Walt said, well, no, because the idea, the story behind it is you're getting shot into space, you're taking a trip through outer space. If you leave the ride, it ruins the effect. You're not immersed in it anymore. You know you're outside. It kills the vibe. So they decided, okay, let's not go with that. Let's keep it all inside. And that is really how the idea of this dark ride roller coaster came about, to have this immersive experience all inside of this one building.
Page 2, people.
They initially, and John Hinch, he was known, he did a lot of work in Epcot, and he was known as like having this love for like computers and technology. And he was the one responsible for designing this whole thing. So he really wanted it to have like heavy computer integration. He wanted it to be the first completely automated ride, so it was completely managed by computers, and designed using computers, and just have all this technology built into it.
Which that just fascinates me anyway, that he had this idea, like, no, like, we're gonna wait till we can do. I mean,
at the time, because this stuff. I mean, it's 1965, or like I think at the time it was probably like 66.
Think of the size of computer, because you think of that now, it's like no big deal. I mean, like, our 4-year-old knows how to work, tablets and phones
like
and all
we
that.
hadn't landed on the moon yet.
Yes,
and
that's a good point. That's funny.
The computers powering like the shuttle, for perspective, the computers powering the shuttle that landed us on the moon had like as much power as a modern day calculator. So like, this is the stuff he was working with, and he was like, yeah, let's do it this way.
A whole ride that will launch people only, but it's just cool.
So therein lies one of the main problems initially, is that the technology available wasn't available. The technology they needed was not yet available. Now, this wasn't a huge problem, because looking at the times, computer technology was developing at a rate where it was like doubling in like speed, processing power, all this stuff, like a year. So they figured, okay, we'll just wait for Moore's law to catch up, and pretty soon we'll be able to do this. So they went on designing the ride, assuming that eventually the technology would be there and they could make it happen. George McGinnis, he came up with a more conical look, so the look that we have today, to the exterior, which was then further developed by John Hench. And if you look at John's later designs based off of George's designs, what you end up with is basically what we have today.
Yeah.
It did have like these flying saucer things attached to the outside, or maybe they were satellite dishes. I don't really know. They're just like these circle things that were on the outside. Those aren't there. But otherwise, it's basically the same ride that we have now.
We have a comment on the live, and good point. It seems Walt forced the need for greater technology. Dean said that, and that's 100%.
Yeah. And that's actually, I was going to say something about that.
Hang on,
in just a minute. Actually, I was 2 lines away. So once the technology, and it did come, eventually computing power got to the point where they could build this, they could, do what they needed to do, because if it was being designed by computers and then driven by computers, the computer would have to know, like, okay, well, this is the car and this is the curve. And once the technology was available, they were out of room. Disneyland was more established. There was
no space.
There was more stuff there, and they didn't have any space.
Yes.
They did come up with ideas and designs of like a smaller version that could fit in. But then there were a lot of issues with that. And then also around this time, Walt Disney passed away.
Yes. Suddenly, and they weren't expecting it.
Yeah, exactly. This is also around the time, Walt Disney World was being constructed and they're planning for that. The company was basically tapped out in terms of resources and power, and they just didn't have the drive to like push forward with these new ideas because this hadn't been done before.
Yeah.
And they didn't have that man there to be like, no, we're doing this. This matters. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
So the idea for Space Mountain, or Spaceport as it was known at the time, was scrapped indefinitely, and they had no plans to make it at all.
Yeah, it wasn't even just like backburnered. It was kind of like, this is done.
Yeah,
like,
just
we
done.
can't do this now.
Like, it just can't happen. So it's done. That is until Walt Disney World opened.
In 71.
Yes. Tomorrowland, it opened with the Tomorrowland. And Tomorrowland wasn't yet finished. And this was the park as a whole. It wasn't complete yet. They knew it wasn't complete. But they had plans to develop it further through like different phases. They were going to add different things. Then, after it had been open for like a year or two, a surprising thing happened. They realized that the Magic Kingdom was very popular with teens and young adults, which is not a demographic that they had planned on servicing. So with this knowledge, they realized, well, we've got to cater to these people. What can we put in here?
Coming, right?
And obviously, the Matterhorn was a huge success. And they said, okay, well, we need some thrill rides here. We don't have any roller coasters in the Magic Kingdom. We got to keep them here, so we need to build one of these. The original idea was to build a Walt Disney World Matterhorn.
Yeah, but then Fantasyland, where that would have gone, was already full. So
yeah, and it didn't fit anywhere else thematically. It's a giant mountain. They didn't have. I mean, like today, it could go in Animal Kingdom, but they have Expedition Everest. So there wasn't any space for it. So like, okay, well, we got to come up with a different roller coaster. So then someone remembered, hey, we have this Space Mountain or Space, I don't know, maybe it was Space Mountain at that time.
Yeah.
We have all of this work we already did. Let's put this in. So Tomorrowland had the perfect amount of space. Even though the ride is actually laid outside the perimeter of the park, it's laid beyond the train tracks. It had enough space. It had the perfect theme for it. It was just everything, the stars aligned, and they could start building this.
Well, and it's so interesting to me that they already had a Tomorrowland, but no one had thought before that, like, to put Space Mountain. It just seems like a no-brainer. But again, it's that hindsight thing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But it all worked out. Space Mountain found its resurgence, and they started working on it.
Yep.
So with RCA as the sponsor, because they needed sponsorship, because this was going to cost a lot of money, they began construction officially in 1972. It took 2.5 years to complete the ride, and then it officially opened January 15th, 1975, with little to no issues. It was the first roller coaster that the Disney company actually built in-house. Typically before that, like with the Matterhorn, they would have a... what do you call it? A consulting company called Aero Development Company come in, and what they were a roller coaster theme park development consulting company. So they would come in and they would have the know-how and they would build the coasters for them. But this was so new and specific that the vision that they had, that they were like, we're building it all in house.
Yep.
So they did it all themselves, which is really cool. The total height of the ride in Walt Disney World is 153 feet, but a portion of it is underground, like a portion of the base, and that was to keep it from being bigger than the castle.
Cinderella Castle, yeah. Because they don't want it to tower over.
Exactly, it can't be bigger than the castle. So the ride was a huge hit, super, super popular. Everyone loved it. So then this sparks the idea to reopen it in Disneyland. Or not reopen, but go back to the idea of building it in Disneyland. Because the popularity would just, it forced their hand. They had to.
Yeah, and we mentioned this at the beginning too, but now it is in every park except for Shanghai.
Shanghai.
Yeah. So it's a popular ride, and a lot of people can't imagine. I mean, can't imagine Disney without it.
Yeah, without it. It's like, it's one of the main rides. You think of Disneyland or Disney World, Disney parks, and you're like, well, Space Mountain, of course. So now that we're back at Disneyland, we still have the same problems. like there was no space, and it's even worse now because they have they've been building and adding to it. So George McGinnis, who worked on the original designs with John Hinch and Bill Watkins, they were the team that headed the team to build the Disneyland version. Like I said, the issue of available space was still a problem. So George knew that if they were going to do this ride, it was going to have to be much smaller. And just to give you an idea ahead of time, the actual size of the Disneyland version is half the size.
Which is that some of these things, it's crazy when we do these dives and we start reading this stuff. I'm like, no way. Like smaller strip, but like when you think half the size, it's incredible. I'm going to hop over to the chat on the live video. Johnny says, how are you? I follow you on your YouTube. Thank you, Johnny. We appreciate that. I love Disneyland. Well, Johnny, have you been on Space Mountain? Let us know. We'd love to hear about that. We've never been to Disneyland, but it's on our list. Oh, cool. Awesome.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
So size, space.
Yeah, he has 2 vlogs, he said. Okay. Or 2 channels. All right.
It's an issue. So some of the initial changes that were made is they brought the queue inside of the ride rather than being outside. This way they could make it a smaller footprint. This also allowed them to add air conditioning to the queue.
Which if you've stood in one of those queues, you know if there's air conditioning.
Much appreciated.
Yes.
So, excuse me, a major plus there. The
spires and the lines outside the ride.
This is just a fun fact because it has to do with an overall construction.
Yeah.
The spires, the lines that are on the side of the building that just look like they look pretty.
They look cool.
Yeah. They look nice or something. Those are actually the support beams for the actual building.
Which is neat.
They have a purpose.
Smart. Yeah.
Which is really cool. So basically what they were presented with is they had to fit a roller coaster in a building, a roller coaster comparable to the original. Because
they don't want people who have been to Disney World, so imagine going to Walt Disney World and then going to Disneyland to a technically newer ride and then being like, well, this is lame. They didn't want that. So They had a really tricky thing to happen.
It's gotta stand up to the original, if not be better. And they had to do it with half the space. So to get more space, one of the things they actually did is they dug 15 feet underground to house a large portion of the ride. This allowed them to have more space to have the coaster go, down and around. And they were only able to fit, we didn't mention this earlier, but the Disney World version has 2 tracks, Alpha and Omega, so you can take 2 different versions of the ride. This also allows them to move a ton of people through the ride, so high capacity, which is good. Disneyland, they're only able to do 1 track.
Yeah.
Only space for 1. So this brings up another problem. There's only 1 track. Well, if they want to make their money back on this investment, they've got to be able to move a large number of people
through that line. Then this comes into play if you watch. We do these every week. That's constantly something that they're thinking about and they're having to figure out is how do they get people through quickly, effectively, so the lines aren't too long, for the people, but also so that they're getting those people through. I mean, it makes sense. How many people can you get through an hour,
Yeah. So estimates were that they had to get like at least 2,000 people per hour through this ride. So how do they do that? One of the things they came up with is the ride car. They were like, okay, well, we got to fit more people in the car. If we get more people on each ride, we can get more people through faster. So if you've been on both, you know this. If not, the Disney World version is a single seater. So you're like one in front of the other with a little lap thing that comes down. Disneyland, you're side by side. So there's 2 people per seat. So the Disneyland cars can fit 12 people. The Disney World ones only fit 8. But with these changes, with the queue going inside, putting more people on each car, they were able to create the ability to move almost the same capacity as the Walt Disney World version into the Disneyland version,
which is
impressive.
Huge. Yeah,
because you're basically looking at this impossible thing. You're like, okay, this is how we did it originally. You're giving me half of what we have available and telling me to do it better. So the fact that they were able to pull it off, just I mean, you see this over and over again. Every time we
Yes.
do one of these, there's a situation like this where it's like, okay, how are they going to do this impossible thing? And they figure out a way.
Well, it was funny because we were actually kind of scrambling. We have 3 kids, and 2 of our 3 kids had soccer games tonight at the same time. So that, of course, in itself is something. But then we had to come home, quick feed them, quick do all this stuff. He's like, okay, I gotta go print these off. And I was like, hey, just stay calm. It's good. We got this. We're gonna roll with it. I'm gonna hop back over to the live chat. So if you're watching the replay, I'm hopping over. I will read it out loud. So I know when I'm watching replays, I like to know what's going on. Dean says that he loves the indoor queue at Disneyland. So well themed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Johnny, going on vacation, Disneyland in 2020, I think it said. And let's see. Awesome. Okay. Try to scroll down. Okay.
Comparable to the Matterhorn bobsleds. Yes. I believe it's not the exact same design, but it's really similar.
Yeah. Well, and they all the stuff is really saying that was what was inspired.
Exactly.
That's where they were taking all those notes. I think the original plan was it's in space, but
it's the same thing, but it's in space. So they got the queue issue figured out. They got the car figured out. The ride officially opened May 27th, 1977. It was insanely popular. People loved it.
Hyped up, yes.
The line the first couple of days was huge, and they actually set attendance records for the park itself, which was giant. And it's credited, to the ride itself. Like, they have this new attraction. Everyone's like, we got to go get on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. One thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to put in here that I just forgot, but it was just in my head. So I'm stalling so I can try and remember it so there's no dead air.
You're good.
Quick, read some comments.
Okay. I will read some comments. Okay. Well, Johnny says, what is your favorite Disney rides? That is very, very hard to narrow down. It depends on if we're going with our kids, if we're going with each other, different ones that have different memories. I love, let's see. Animal Kingdom, I absolutely love the safari. I love that it's different every time. I think that's really fun. We're big zoo people. We love animals. So that's my Animal Kingdom one. That's pretty easy for me. Other parks, I would really have to think about it. I love Soarin' at Epcot. I love Soarin'.
Okay, so I can't remember. But
okay. I was really trying.
There is one thing that I remembered that I wanted to mention, and that is that another thing to keep in mind with this impossible task is that they couldn't just copy the ride at Disney World.
Yeah.
I mean, which is obvious, they had to only have one track, but then they couldn't just copy that one track because it was a completely different space.
Yes.
They had to completely design a new ride to fit in this space. So it was just one, the first one opened, and then that's why we're doing the both of them like this, because the Walt Disney World one, they just built it, went off without a hitch, everyone loved it, perfect, end of story. The Disneyland version is like this team going up against these insurmountable odds, trying to make this thing happen where it just can't happen, and they somehow do it anyway. Like, they pull it off in a way that it's like it shouldn't be able to have happened.
Well, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but I kind of like that pressure, and I feel like that's what Disney, like, I get it, because like some people, they like that like little pressure, and Disney Imagineers must love that pressure because they get it all the time. It's like, you have to do this and you have to make this happen.
But it's just another way, and this I think it's something that you always saw in Walt when he was there, pushing them to do the impossible, to make all these things happen. And it's just another example of against all the odds, and in a way that you had to be incredibly creative and thoughtful and just come up with all of these different solutions, and they're able to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you would think it would make for an inferior experience, but a lot of people, if you see the reviews, a lot of people prefer the Disneyland version over Disney World. So I mean,
that's what makes
volumes.
Disney the best. I think that was well said. And that's what makes Disney the best, is that they kept pushing and not just staying comfortable. Like, you don't stay comfortable, you keep bettering and bettering and bettering over and over. Yes.
So the ride itself, at both parks, Space Mountain is a gravity ride. If you don't know what that is, it means that the initial, like when you're going up a roller coaster and you're going click, 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 that is the only part of the ride where it is actually driven. after you go over that top part, the rest of it is gravity pulling it around the tracks.
Which is how newer roller coasters are able to get faster and faster, because you go on these ones
you go
where they
higher
go
and higher,
up.
and you go faster and faster. It makes sense. It seems totally normal. Becomes terrifying when you realize that they can run 12 cars on the track at one time. Super scary because they're just flying freely like little bullets around these tracks. And it seems like you would have some accidents. They have never had an accident. This is because when you go onto the ride, when you enter the ride,
knock on wood,
you move forward a little bit, and then it sort of stops for a second before you go again.
I don't know.
Well, that's what happens. You get on the ride, you're bored.
I've watched many videos though. Yeah.
You go, it stops for a second. When it stops, what it's doing is it's weighing the car. So, and because eventually when they did build this, it is all managed, it is all run by computers. It's fully automated.
Yeah.
So it's weighing the car and it's calculating, okay, this car weighs more than the one that just went in front of it. So it's going to make it wait longer based on whatever calculations go into figuring out how fast it's going to go through the ride, how fast it's going to take to get to the end, to make sure
that's amazing
that it doesn't catch up to the next car. So when you stop there, it's checking you out. It's like, okay, this one's a little lighter, so it can go now. So if you ever wait there for a long time, it's because you've got a bunch of really heavy people in the car with you, and it's going to make you go super fast. So if you wait for a really long time, just know that you're going faster than the other people, and that makes it more fun.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting too, because it's one of those things that you might think like, oh, it feels like it waits. Well, you are, because certain times, or if you don't have a full car, like if it's not, sometimes they aren't filled, especially if you're at a party or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, which actually probably happened to me because when I went on it, there was only like at one point like 2 of us on the ride, so it probably was going.
And you were like 10, yeah.
I'm like, wee. So speaking of speed, the ride only has a maximum speed. I read like 28 miles per hour and 30 miles per hour, somewhere around there. Not very fast. It's going pretty slow. But they still make it seem like it's super fast. How do they do that?
Tell us, Steph.
Well, the fact that it's pitch black, first of all, it cuts off any sense of perspective. So you have no idea. You have nothing to look at in terms of like, oh, I can see that going by me, so I know we're not going that fast.
Yeah.
So you immediately are just going off a feel. You immediately assume that it's going faster than it really is. The lights that they have at the very beginning in the tunnel as you're loading up, those start going faster and faster. That kind of presets your mind to thinking that you're going very, very fast. So as the lights start speeding up and the sound starts speeding up, and then you get into the ride, you already think like, oh, we're going so fast. Oh, it's way faster. We're going like 60 miles an hour. Obviously not, but that it just kind of adds to it. There are lights throughout the ride too that make it seem like you're going faster than you really are. And then this is really interesting. At certain points in the ride, there are high-powered fans that blow air past you to make it feel like you're just
going fast,
zipping around.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that just all these things add together to make it feel like you're going so much faster than you really are. And then later on in the Disneyland version, they added music, which just seems like a no-brainer. Like, why would you not have music? To make it to just add to it. You hear so fast song, it makes it seem like you're going faster. So that just added to it. Now, as far as updates and refurbishments, this is one ride that has pretty much remained basically the same. Now, it's not a ride because it is a coaster, it's not a ride like, say, like Pirates, where you've got, things you can add, animated things that you can add and update and change.
Yeah, all the animatronic.
So it doesn't have that sort of thing. But most of the updates have come with like the different themed like overlays that they have with it.
Yeah.
Or there's been a few different sponsors. Changes came with the sponsor changes. So initially, we mentioned earlier, RCA was the original sponsor. They discontinued their sponsorship in 1993.
And didn't we? I'm pretty sure, wasn't it 10 million that they gave originally? Yeah. So it wasn't, which in today's standards, but it was, at the time, it was a big amount of money.
And that the fun fact, the way that RCA agreed to do the sponsorship was they they said, okay, well, give us advertising like within the ride. Well, the majority of the ride is completely dark. Like you can't see any advertising. So in the queue section, in the beginning and the end, is where the RCA stuff was added. Like they have the little like RCA dog, which I had his name, but I can't remember now. It's like Nipper or something like that. They had like a little like UFO version, like it was in a UFO looking at like the speaker.
Yeah.
And they had some other stuff around there. But then one of the other things that I found is that RCA also got the contract to do like all of the, I don't know if it was the telecommunications work, but something in the Walt Disney World Resort. So they got this big contract to do this. Then they also donated all this money to build this ride with the added advertisements.
Right.
There we
Yeah.
go. To be put in there. So
Sorry,
anyway,
I won't be out there very much.
in 93, they ended their sponsorship, and Federal Express, FedEx, picked it up in 1994. So with this new sponsorship came a bunch of new features. This included the new sign on the outside. There were like FedEx references put in throughout the queue and like the signage and the verbiage. So it's like
it fit great.
FedEx 1134, stuff like that.
Like ship and
like sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, new post show with a package sorting center in the shipping packages so that they were shipping through galaxy transportation and teleportation.
Yeah, they were kind of using like Star Trek teleporters to like transfer packages and stuff like that. So things like that were added. In 1995, the soundtrack was added in Disneyland, not in Walt Disney World. Walt Disney World still does not have the music. So Disneyland got it though, and it's actually really cool because they got it. The music is done by Dick Dale, and he is one of the original pioneers of like surf music. So when you think of like that, like like beach party movies and stuff, they had him do it. And that's the kind of music that it is, but it works. It fits for some reason. It's not really spacey,
galactic,
but it I don't know how it fits. It just does.
I think the lights with that kind of vibe. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe just the way that you're moving, and it does sort of have a sci-fi tinge to it, I guess. But somehow it just works. Like totally different elements, and
it's
you put them together, and they just you don't question it. Because it wasn't until it was pointed out to me that it was surf music. I mean, I guess I always knew it was, but actually reading that, I was like, oh yeah, but it still works. Okay.
Okay, now we're at 1997.
Yes.
And that's when Tomorrowland was getting another facelift. They were refurbing a lot of stuff in Tomorrowland. So to match the paint, they put it outside, like all throughout. They carried it through.
What they were doing, and this is something we mentioned at the beginning, is they were again they're trying to give it more longevity because the thing they keep running into is Tomorrowland keeps looking like yesterday
outdated. Yeah, yesteryear.
Because all this stuff that we have in there as visions of tomorrow are outdated and old, and it doesn't look nice. So they're like, okay, well, how do we make this look timeless, basically?
And the answer is steampunk. So they did a lot of copper.
Yeah, so they went with a lot of like steampunky, like retro future.
This is a fun side note, like to just go off on a mini little thing, but we've done those old time photos. We have many of them from when we were engaged, married, and then with our kids. We haven't done one in several years, but we used to do it every year for a long time. And there's all different themes that you can do. And we've gone through so many of them that we had done almost every theme. And the one that Stefan was like, no, like we've done, gosh, I can't even name them all, but we've done basically every one that you see, like the old Western ones and stuff. And the one that Stefan was completely unexcited about was steampunk. He's just, no.
You would think it's something that I would really enjoy.
Yes, and that's what's funny. If you,
I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get into steampunks, and it's right up my alley because I love like
Wild Wild West.
Yeah, like things that are like exposed like gears and inner workings. Like I love that stuff, but there's just something about steampunk where I'm like, ew.
Yeah. Anytime I see it now, I think, oh, stop.
I think maybe it's just too brown. I don't know.
It's too brown.
It's just like it's all these like copper and earth tones, and I
love me some copper. Ooh,
well,
kitchen.
So anyway, that's what they were doing to Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
They were making it look all steampunk, and this is when they painted the outside of Space Mountain to be that like coppery, brownish, greenish kind of color. Very controversial. A lot of people didn't like it. I mean, it went with the theme of the rest of Tomorrowland. I think if it had been bright white, it would have looked really out of place, and it just wouldn't have matched. So I understand why they did it, and I don't really have any issue with it. You know, whatever. It's still the same ride inside.
Yeah.
But that was one of the more controversial changes.
Yeah. So this was mid 90s. This was 97, and then we hop up to 2003.
Yeah, not a lot was done between then. But in 2003, major overhaul to the entire ride, and it was shut down for 2 whole years.
Which is crazy. That's
2 years, no
time.
Space Mountain. Now, what was done, and this isn't like I didn't find any like official stuff here, but they must have gotten like some inspector must have come in and been like, "Whoa, you gotta change this. It's not up to code," or something must have happened, because what they did is they tore out everything. Like they took out the original track, every mechanical part involved, got rid of it, and rebuilt the exact same stuff, but what I assume is with up to code materials.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was more and modern.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't get any details about exactly what was done, other than they added just the same exact track. It was the same exact ride. They just rebuilt it. So I'm assuming that they just needed to do that because it was not up to code.
Hey, you made it through a few times before then, so probably fine.
Yeah, but at this time they also repainted the exterior white. So they got rid of the brown.
The bright white that you know today.
Yes, which is iconic and wonderful, and I think that's what it should be. So I hope they don't change it again. There wasn't another change for another 3 years, but then in 2006 they did like this test overlay where, and I don't know if this was a time when like the Rock and Roller Coaster was coming out or something, but someone decided to do a like rockin' music themed overlay to the ride, and it featured
Rock and Roller Coaster was already there,
but I don't know if it was like height of popularity or something.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I rode it around that time.
Well, and this is all in Disneyland also.
Oh, so. Okay. I'm thinking Disney World.
But so someone decided that they were going to do this music overlay to Space Mountain, and it featured a Hoobastank song.
Random.
Yeah, ultra popular band Hoobastank.
Yeah.
But this wasn't seen by the general public. This was more of like a after hours thing for people to test out. But someone thought it was a good idea because for quite a while it did get a permanent overlay that featured a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. So they went with the music theme for a while. In fall 2007, they did get the Ghost Galaxy Halloween overlay.
Yes.
Which they've done every year since then. I don't know if they do it recently, actually, but...
Yeah, if anybody knows, let us know. If you're watching on the replay, let us know, because that would be interesting.
Yeah, the information I found said that they have done it every year, but I'm not sure if that's accurate, because then in 2015, they did Hyperspace Mountain, which was the Star Wars overlay. And that opened up and was permanent for quite a while. 2 years. Because then on June 1st, 2017, they got rid of that.
And that's another one that people have a lot of different opinions about. Like, there's people who really like Hyperspace Mountain, and it was like, and then there's people who were just like dedicated to the original, like they were the OG people, and they were like, absolutely not, I'm not here for this. And it's kind of come up to be a topic again now with, oh my gosh, the Guardians of the Galaxy coming in with Tower of Terror. People have a lot of mixed feelings on that. Some people love it, and we have not ridden that, of course, because we haven't been to Disneyland.
Yeah.
But we both love Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. And, I think I would love the ride.
Yeah.
I've seen the ride throughs, like the POV videos, and it looks like it would be fantastic.
And I think it's interesting because it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to mess with something that classic, but that's a pretty good theme. And I think Hyperspace Mountain, pretty good theme, but I get that people are like, no, don't be messing with
yeah, because I've seen, and I think I would love the ghost one too, the Halloween one. Like, it just seems like it would be a fun change, especially if you're going there on a regular basis.
Oh, totally.
Like, my opinion would be like, yeah, change it up, do it. But to have it permanent, I'm like, well, maybe not so much.
Don't mess with it, yeah.
But to have these, like, occasional changes, I think it'd be cool. I would really enjoy it. But Hyperspace Mountain, they got rid of it June 1st, 2017. But then it did come back in 2018 as part of Star Wars Nights. And it's probably going to be coming back more. It's gone now.
Yeah.
June 3rd, 2018, it was gone for good. I'm sure they're going to bring it back again. Like,
I was thinking
to promo the movie.
About tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week when we're here, it is going to be the day before or the night before Galaxy's Edge
Mm-hmm.
officially opens. Of course, they have the AP Pass preview right now for annual pass holders who were able to get tickets, but
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
pretty crazy.
So actually, maybe they won't do that again. You know, now that they have a whole Star Wars land, they're probably not going to do a Star Wars themed ride outside of that.
It's true. Maybe
Possibly.
that was it.
Yeah. So that's probably going to be the end of it. I mean, yeah, because why waste time doing that when you can just build a new attraction to get people into, especially if they want to funnel people into this new land they have.
Interesting.
But as far as any other really updates, I mean, there have been changes to the queue. I know that the Disneyland version, there was there used to be like an escalator and like I think a moving sidewalk or something like that, but they've gotten rid of that. Now you just walk up this incline and other like external like changes like that, just like topical things. Nothing major to the ride. Nothing like no major things added. No new parts in the coaster added. Just simple updates here and there. For the most part, it has remained what it was when it first opened.
I think it's interesting because it is one where, because it's in Tomorrowland, especially Disney World and stuff, you would think that it would be getting outdated faster, especially with all the things happening in actual space. You'd think, okay, but I think that it still works. Like the idea is just like this fun idea, and it still works as like a Tomorrowland vibe and like a futuristic thing.
Like all the best rides and attractions at Disney, what it does, it pulls off with these simple parlor tricks that just they don't ever get old, because they play on like these base human facts and ideas, like blowing air in your face and throwing you around in the dark just makes it seem fun, because where else are you going to get that?
Yeah. And it's just fun.
Yeah. And I think that's really one of the main reasons I loved it as a kid, is because you're not outside staring. You don't know how high up you are. There's a lot of unknowns, which adds to maybe like the fear, but also to like the sense of safety, because you're telling yourself, well, I don't know how high up I really am, but I am feeling this and this is fun. So as a kid, as a kid who didn't enjoy roller coasters, I was still able to enjoy this.
Yes.
Which I think is a special thing, and that's why it's still one of like the special rides to me.
Yeah.
So, fun fact lightning round.
We still don't have our props, guys. Let us know. Send us some Amazon links, and
I need to remember to do that.
it'll be fun. All right. Go ahead.
Typically we have all these facts listed, and all of the fun facts I could find were things like number of people that you can get through the ride. Here's how tall it is. Here's the number of bolts used.
They were a little less for this one.
They were boring. Not cool. Until I found this fun fact, which is there was going to be a movie based on Space Mountain. So this is around the time when, like, Pirates of the Caribbean is huge.
I want to see that movie.
And they make Haunted Mansion.
Yep.
They made a Tomorrowland movie, which I forgot was a thing, and I have never seen it until I was researching this.
I think it'll be on the Disney Plus. And speaking of Disney Plus, in the live chat, I did see someone mention that. Johnny, I think it was you. And yes, we are very excited for Disney Plus. We're getting it.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Netflix is going bye-bye because we need all of our Disney stuff. Which it should be on there, though, because they said all movies...
I hope so. That'd be awesome.
A day of service, so it should be on there. We can finally watch it. Even though it wasn't that highly reviewed, I'd still see it.
Oh, it doesn't matter. And usually those are the ones I like better.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. So the movie was written by, it didn't get very far, but it was written by a screenwriter, filmmaker, Max Landis. He did American Ultra and that Netflix movie Bright, which I haven't seen American Ultra, seen Bright. To both of them, I mean, it's just they exist. Nothing groundbreaking, but
good job for you though, Max Landis.
He's still getting work though. He's got I think he's doing a remake on American Werewolf in London. I think I read that.
American Werewolf, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe that might be old, and I didn't really look into it any further. I just read it offhandedly. But anyway, he was writing it, and in an interview, he gave some like ideas and some tidbits of what it was going to be. So I want to talk about this for the rest of our time. He said, my Space Mountain movie was cool. It was a 50s retro future. They had rocket ships and ray guns electrons, but no cell phones and internet. So apparently it was going to take place in the future, but a future that at some point took a different turning point where they didn't go the way of
like that we are headed.
Data integration and social networks and connecting people through computers. It was just it does what good sci-fi does, where it takes this concept of technology and it's like, but what if this happened? So already I like this idea. Then it gets a little different. He says another cool thing was the idea that when you came back from Lightspeed, because people were going to be traveling on like coaster type things to go Lightspeed, to go to like different planets and stuff. But when you came back from Lightspeed, you're 9.5 grams lighter, but you seem normal. Then slowly, over the course of a day, it turns out that the human soul can't travel at light speed.
This is horrifying. Horrifying.
So the whole ship comes back with people with no souls who seem normal, but then they turn into horrible monsters.
If you don't know this about me and him, my lovely husband, he loves weird movies.
Okay, but this is where it kind of jumps the shark, and it's like, wait, what? So you're introducing this concept that the soul leaves the human body, and then they mutate into monsters.
For you.
Maybe. This is not a Disney themed movie,
no,
for sure.
Oh, absolutely not.
It starts out sounding really cool. Like they did try to do this with that Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, where it's like vintage future.
Yeah.
That movie was horrible, but this sounds like it'd be pretty cool. Like if it was just all they had to do was make it like be a look into this world where technology went this way instead of this way. It's like Meet the Robinsons, which is one of my new favorite movies.
Oh my gosh, we love that movie.
It's when you look at that future, it's a future where they took technology and they're like, let's improve everyone's lives with technology, and that's the route it took. Which I guess when you look at what really happened, it is they took technology and said, let's monetize everything. And that's where we are today.
Yeah.
But in a world where they're using technology to just make things better for people, you get something like that. You maybe don't have cell phones, or you have an iteration of cell phone that's different, and maybe internet that's different. But it's just technology around you making things easier, better, and a better existence. It's when you get into this idea of souls leaving the human body because of light speed, where it just jumps the shark.
Yes.
And they turn into like zombie monsters.
Yeah, which when you're reading this, thinking any movie, you're like, yeah, it's kind of one of those like funny ones. But like, you're thinking Disney too, and it's like, no, something's not aligning.
Yeah.
I would love to see them do I would petition for them to do one, but maybe
that was like the first part.
Change that a little. But usually most movies, they start as one thing, and then there's a whole bunch of other things, and then they become something totally different.
Yeah. I mean, the other one does sound like a good like sci-fi horror movie.
The 50s retro?
Yeah. No. The second part. The scary part.
Oh,
like
as
far as like a sci-fi horror film, that's a pretty good idea. I don't know why no one's done that yet, but
Stefan likes to watch. I mean, I did too, but he likes to watch movies and then mock them.
I've got to watch a lot of things by myself.
Yeah. No.
Because other people can't stand watching it with me.
Yeah, he texts his couple buddies and
So for there were a few other places where Space Mountain did show up, though. It did show up in Meet the Robinsons, which is why I made that connection, as like one of the background buildings, and it does show up in Tomorrowland apparently. Again, I've never seen it, but it does show up as an Easter egg in both of those.
I've got to make a list for some of those movies. I want to watch them, definitely.
And that is it for Space Mountain.
Yes, that is it for Space Mountain. We do want to do a little bit of housekeeping, which is, if you do not know, Stefan is a full-time graphic designer and a wholesale screen printer, and I am a social media manager. But together, we do this, but we also have a Disney small shop. And for every episode of Disney Deep Dive, we have a shirt. However, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. Don't have a Space Mountain one yet because we were on vacation and I didn't design one. So.
Yes, but it's going to be going up before the next episode. So I just gave him that deadline right now. You like how I did that?
Oh, yes. I had
the pressure on. Yeah. But yes, so definitely check that out and let us know what other rides or attractions you would like us to feature. If you're watching the replay, leave it in a comment. If you're watching live, leave it in a comment. We want to do what you guys want to see. We also have a whole bunch of shirts available, including, let's see, the one I'm wearing right now. Give me some sugar. I love this one. But we have a lot of fun shirts. I just posted one today, one of my other favorites on our Instagram. We want to thank theliveplace.com, which Dean was on earlier, and he hosts the streams. So thank you so much. And definitely, if you have not checked out The Live Place, definitely do. It's great family-friendly content. And lots of Disney, lots of Disney creators and really kind people. So it's a really positive, awesome place to be. And we are grateful to Dean and everyone there who is so supportive and kind. And we want to thank you for watching and participating and leaving us comments. It really does mean a lot to us. And it's so fun. Spread the word. If you like this, if you found it valuable, share it out. Let people know, because it's more fun when people are commenting and interacting.
We are here every Wednesday at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
So tune in, watch us live, comment. It's a ton of fun. We want to get more people talking in the comments, because obviously it's more fun if you have people participating. Even though I don't know how that would work out, because we still go to an hour every single time with all the stuff that we have to say. So
all nicely interrupted.
We'll figure it out. You can follow me on Instagram at Small World Shirts Co.
Yes, and you can follow me at LeahTackles. Those are both linked in the description, so check them out there. Easy, click it, and then you don't have to remember it. But LeahTackles and Small World Shirts Co.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and that we hope that you have a magical day.
We'll see you real soon.
Bye.
Bye.